Hello there, this is Dr. Samurai, a professor in Japan specializing in international social pathology, which can be seen in multiple countries. Okay, I am looking into the mechanism of how it happens. And the topic of today's my minute lecture is Wichita Massacre by Mr. Reginald Carr and Jonathan Carr. Okay, as usual, from general information to information from our personal exchanges. And this is the qualification that I'm doing teaching at the university. Wichita, Kansas. The Carr brothers. Carr spelled C-A-R-R. Okay? Carr brothers. Reginald, 22. Jonathan, 20. Suddenly broke into a friend's party among teachers and company workers, like financial companies. There were 5 people at the party. They burst into their party randomly and killed 5, seriously injured 1 person. They were one time commuted to life sentence because of some lack of legal technicalities, but later on reinstated to death penalty. Okay, so I would like to talk about the details of what happened. Wichita Massacre. Okay, the Carr brothers are famous for the long record of crimes since they were young. They moved from Dodge City to Wichita, Kansas in year 2000. Okay, it was the end of the year 2000, and they first injured assistant soccer coach, 23 years old soccer coach, and robbed him and ran away. Then 3 days after, okay, they shooted this 55-year-old lady who worked for a library when she tried to run away from them. She died 3 days later. And 3 days after that, they randomly chose one room where they had a friend parties, among teachers and financial company workers. In total 5 people. They are having a home party. The brothers killed the dog and also killed 4 out of those 5. Indeed, the party was arranged so that one of the 5 gentlemen was going to, make a propose to one of the lady in the party. So he had his engagement ring ready to give to her. Okay? It was a special occasion planned among close friends. But it didn't have anything to do with the Carr brothers, right? And Reginald and Jonathan raped girls and forced guys to do the same on girls, forced girls to do lesbian play as well. After that, they took them in their car to at the ATM. They had them withdraw all the money they had at the time. After that, they moved to some soccer field where nobody was and forced them to knee and kill one by one by execution style. The brothers went back to the where party was after they killed those people and tried to find something valuable. Okay, having made sure that they left one of the lady who was accidentally by wearing a female comb. It blocked the bullet from damaging her head. So she stood up and ran into one of the closest neighbor, totally naked, and had them call 911. Okay? The very next day, the both brothers were arrested based upon their two witnesses. The older brother, Reggie, was confirmed to be the perpetrator. So it was not difficult for them to be sentenced to death because of all they did. But later on, because probably their attorney was good, he pointed out technical mistakes, one of which was both brothers were on trial at the same time, not independently, even if it was a death trial. And the other thing was the juries were told in advance about how difficult their childhood life was and things like that. The attorney pointed out those technical misproceedings, and one time they were commuted to life sentence, but having done what they did, it was way more cruel than being commuted. So they were reinstated to a death sentence again. Okay? This is the general information so far about Wichita Massacre. And let's move on to part 2 of my personal knowledge about Mr. Reggie. I put normally Reggie or sometimes Reginald. I don't know, either way. More often I go with Reggie. But anyway, I communicate with the older brother, Reggie, okay? It was about 10 years ago when I first started to contact, and the contact is still continuing. I never cut off the contact on my side. Some I mistreated them and they cut off, but unless they cut off on their side, I try to make the line alive whenever I feel like contacting them back, okay? And I said Wichita, Kansas, right? Good, viewer might remember the name has to do with BTK, Dennis Rader, the same town. And they are at the same El Dorado Correctional Facility, okay? Both of them were highly outstanding inmates at the El Dorado Correctional Facility. However, this is my personal impression, but Dennis Rader being nationally famous, this Wichita Massacre is nationally famous too, but BTK was, is a serial killer and was, influential for almost 20 years and stuff. So I kind of think he is treated with better care. That's my impression, but I think it is right. And I started out with the usual, how you doing, as a friend. That is my stance, right? He goes that without TV or radio, it's very long to kill time for one day, you know. So all I do is just daydream. I thought it was, very difficult. I said, it must be tough. If you have some kind of book you are especially interested in, I will do the best I can. And he goes, would it be possible for you to send me an encyclopedia which has many pictures of animals, in which I can see details of their shapes and lines? Because when I am drawing pictures, time passes the fastest. It made sense, so I did send a couple of books to him. I have suddenly remembered, I think he called me 2 or 3 times from the prison at my home in Tokyo and talked to each other for like 15 minutes or so each time. He was pretty, sounded pretty cool, low tone and not, light character, like more like heavy character, which I liked. We exchanged by letters for a couple of months. Two things started to be clear to me. First, when I used polite words like Mr. Reginald and stuff like that, because I didn't know him at first, he got angry, saying that I am in a isolated self where I can talk to nobody. So don't put such unnecessarily polite words. Cut the bullshit and just call me Reggie. And also, he was angry that it seems like you don't talk about yourself that much, and I feel like I keep talking about myself all the time. He was angry about me being secretive, which I am not. That's my character. I am not interested in talking about myself because I already know who I am, and information is not new to me, not interesting. So I normally stand to listen to what the others have to say, but he didn't like it. So in order for me to continue our correspondences, I tried my best to come up with some daily problems to talk about in my personal life, and he listens to it and answers my what's the best way to deal with my problems and stuff like that. So without knowing it, he became my consultant, and I became like his client or something. I always write some kind of problems that is happening in my personal life, like I don't like this guy at school, and he goes like you should do this and that and stuff like that. Okay, another thing I started to understand was what he was talking about, what really happened in that massacre incident had a big gap from what the prosecuting side is insisting. Those two sides, their opinions are totally different. I tell you about it. Okay, what Reggie told me about what happened was, at that time I was somewhere else, and I suddenly received this phone call from my brother Jonathan, and he was kind of crying and weeping, and I said, hey, calm down and tell me what happened. And he goes like, there was this bad dude, and he said, let's assault some room, some house, and get the money and stuff like that. And I just cannot help, following him. So I just went with him to the party. And when he came to, it was such a, it became such a big deal. And Jonathan told me that, hey, please help me, because Reggie was his older brother, always protective since they were both little kids. So Reggie said he drove his truck over to the apartment house where Patty was, and there were many things thrown out of the room. He thought it would be the best to pick things up on his truck and bring it to his house for now, anyway, okay? And later he sent me this official documentation about what happened, written by his attorney. On that, there was this third party who was the center of all this incident. So I logically said, why don't you find the guy and bring him into the court? Then everything will be over. And he goes like, yeah, I know that's right. But like I said, this Wichita was a new place for us from Dodge City. And we didn't know him that well. We just knew him only by his nickname. Didn't even know his full name. So there's no way for me to find where he was, and don't even know his phone number and stuff. And in addition to that, he even called my friend and said if I, rat on him somehow at the trial, he said he will kill my family. He threatened me and things like that. I went, I see, right? So what came to my mind at the time was knowing that their sentence was already, decided. All he could do is maybe set up some personal website and collect the information about the guy and find where he lives and his phone numbers and stuff like that. The information that is reliable. Then putting all the information together, he could go for appeal again. That's what I thought. Reggie and Jonathan, they were very close brothers. Their mom divorced and they were living in the same apartment with two bedrooms. No, maybe one bedroom. And that bedroom, Mom took up and occupied. And in her territory, she had everything, like microwave and TVs and good sofa and everything, computers and things like that. But on kids' sides, they're separated by just one door. There was nothing. They couldn't even have a TV, or sometimes they didn't even have something to eat, right? So it's like, although the three were under the same roof of the apartment house, Mom occupied pretty much most of the space of the apartment house and filled with all kinds of, things and devices, that make her life fun and easy. But on kids' sides, there was nothing, They were neglected. And whenever her boyfriend came, he went through the brother's space, opened the door and into the mom's space, and closed the door, and that's it. He never came out for hours. Okay? So she just didn't want to take care of her kids, right? So when Reggie hit the 6th grade, he started to change. He and Jonathan were dirt poor. Didn't even have what they needed for classes. That's what Reggie said to me. So he approached one of the local drug dealer, and started to sell crack cocaine that he got from that drug dealer at the 6th grade, which means like 12 years old. Okay, and he started to get rich, and soon he became the most fashionable boy in school and was very popular with older girls. He always had some good looking older girlfriend. Never had no time that he did not have any girlfriend in those days, because he had money and fashionable and newest shoes and jeans and coats and whatever. He was a gangster now, right? And soon, I think when he, before, I don't know, he didn't mention the exact age, but I think by the time he became like 18 years old, he was in charge of like 2 towns completely for crack cocaine deal. He was the boss there, in charge of 2 towns. He had enough money, and occasionally he dressed up, and he liked to go in, a cruise, taking the cruise ship to travel, And he advised me so many interesting things about how to be a gangster, because he was a real one, I mean, kind of not the, top level, but in charge of 2 towns. He knows all the basics, right? And the first thing he told me was, you gotta be careful about the woman, because woman can always get close to someone in power by using her being a woman, right? Her sexuality was her weapon to get close to somebody with power. There are many guys who, relax themselves too much when they are with the woman, and in their bed talk, they talk about this business information, when he buy new stuff, and where he store his drugs, and all those detailed business information. And the woman gives that information to guys who specializes in assaulting drug dealers only. Can you believe this? There are guys who are professional robbers of drug dealers. They don't rob ordinary people, only drug dealers, because they know drug dealers have money, and they get that information from the woman. So in a drug business, he said the woman is a very effective spy, and he said he experienced that scenario one time. But Reggie was very smart. He knew things like that could happen sometimes, so he already prepared drugs that could be given to those, robbers, apart from most of the drugs he had, right? So when those robbers came in with the information based upon what the girl provided them, what Reggie gave them was those he already prepared in advance. And he was very smart. Okay, I will give you all the drug that I have now. So please do not hit me with a gun. He was very smart, He knows how damaging being hit, by the grip of the gun. And, although he was strapped and took 24 hours or so until his help came to his house. He was unhurt, and only thing he lost was what he prepared to give those robbers in advance, and he kept most of his drugs untouched. That's what he told me, and I remember I was impressed very much. In short, Reggie was real street smart. And having said all this, let's get back to what we were talking about his case. There are two different stances. One is what the prosecutors, says, that this Wichita Massacre was spree killing for the purpose of robbing what can be valuable. And the brothers did that without putting a cooling off period. Prosecuting side said this was spree murder for valuables. Reggie's side, on the other hand, said there was one other party, and this guy involved his younger brother and made all mess. Knowing all that, he went over to the crime scene knowing that police were there to save his younger brother. That was his story. Which story do you think sounds more true? My answer is on the prosecuting side. Reggie is lying. You know why? There are two reasons. Like I said, I have been doing this for almost 20 years, right? And I know my knowledge is and understanding is deeper. There may be a police officers who dealt with more cases and stuff like that, but my job is based upon the cases and digging it up deeper. I always try to find some rules that applies to most of the cases, In my understanding, what I thought was suspicious was his aggressiveness that he showed in the beginning in our exchanges. He was too serious to take the controlling side. He wanted to be higher than me psychologically. He wanted to control me. That's why he kept criticizing me, not talking about myself, and putting all those, polite words and things like that. He wanted to control me psychologically. He wanted to put me lower than him, okay? This is exactly the same that I felt with the Hillside Strangler, Claremont Killer, Eyeball Killer, and so on. Psychopath. They get short-tempered when they know we don't trust them. So they become very serious in the beginning to take the higher stance than the others. They have to be the boss, no exception. And I felt that fully strange. That why this guy gets so angry so often about what I'm just doing naturally. It rang a big bell, the same big bell as when I dealt with Hillside Stranglers and Claremont Killers and Eyeball Killers. They lie and they force us to believe it. They force us to stand on their side if I want to have some relationship with them. And number two is, I think some of you might remember, their excuse is always about the details and technicalities of the prosecuting side or police. What Reggie told me was the police would never listen to what I have to say. That thing that there was the third party, they never try to listen to that. This kind of a denial of the characters, personality of the other side is well worn out device that all the heavy criminals used to me to have me believe they are right. So those two things fell into my immobile categories that came from years of my experiences. So these two things being confirmed, which are immobile, never changing part of the formulas when I judge psychopath. I thought Reggie was lying. And once I judged that way, everything started to be suspicious. Because if you were Reggie, they killed 5 people. Do you think you killed 5 people with a guy whose full name you don't even know and whose cell numbers and addresses you don't even know? It is too unnatural, and that cannot be. And here I would like to give you some basic information about the spree killer. Spree killer is what exists between serial killers and mass murderers. But in their early infancy, that means during their critical period, they were not confined in their home. They were allowed to contact outside people, or either people with inside whom they can talk to about what they really thinking about. In case of Reggie, he had Jonathan, right? And he could also have someone to talk to outside. He was dealing with the drugs at the age of 12 and things like that. So guessing from all those information, I think he were free to play with other kids when he was young, although his mother was highly neglective or neglectful. Okay? And what I'm saying is, when you are allowed to communicate with others under high abuse or under high neglect, although they have pretty much the same psychological impact inside, superficially they can communicate, so they don't show it so clearly to the outside. Does this make sense? There were 2 types of spree killers. One is once you started to get angry, once you lose yourself, you just cannot stop and keep using violence until you get killed or you get arrested and you get shot by police or things like that. Or the other type is, once they let themselves go for things they want, like money. Once they start that, like looting into somebody's house and getting money, once they do that, they cannot stop that anymore. So they just keep robbing money and valuables until they get killed or arrested and getting shot by police. Either way, angry type that they cannot stop themselves, or those who are obsessed with the things and monies they want. They cannot stop, although on surface they look like they are functioning normally. Okay? These are the spree killer 2 types. And they don't have cooling off period like serial killers. So they do it in one breath. Sometimes on one day, sometimes a few days, sometimes 1 week, sometimes like as long as maybe a couple of months, but it's much shorter without cooling off period. Once they start doing it, they cannot stop, either for things or either for anger. You know, that's the spree killer. And what about Reggie's case? Reggie and Jonathan were highly neglected and they are dirt poor, right? So they are the obsessive type with the things and valuables. So that's why, although on surface he looks cool, once something turned on his switch, he couldn't stop robbing people to get their money or valuables. That's why they went back to the party side to look for further valuables and going to ATM and had them withdraw all the money they had. So inside there's this engine that they cannot stop. So once a fire is lit, they go all the way, not thinking about what would happen, not thinking about their arrest. That is the, interesting point, which one FBI investigator also points out. So let me put it this way. Serial killers and mass murderers, they are the one placed under high neglect or high abuse, confined in within a house without any outside communications. So they are psychologically distorted. But those spree killers, they were placed the same kind of neglect and abuse, but they were not confined and was able to communicate with others. But once their switch is turned on, they cannot stop, and they go all the way till they get stopped by force. Okay? In Reggie's case, under high neglect by his mother, he had high obsession with the money, valuables, and things. With Jonathan, who had the same deep desire, they started with that assistant coach, and once they started, nobody can stop them until they get arrested. That's it. So, although one time they were commuted to life sentence, considering the level of what they did, killing 5 and died. Even on the day the guy was planning to propose, they still put the valuables they want before their lives. So this kind of thing that cannot be denied. Whatever kind of technical mistakes the attorney point out, it's too big to ignore, and it's too big to avoid capital punishment. I am talking about dynamics, mechanisms that worked behind Reggie. But he is a good guy, except for what he did, and he have to pay for this by his life. So punishment is not my business. I will still keep communicating with him as usual. But as a professional, I know what was the motive deep underneath of those two brothers. Okay? I think I gave you enough information, so I would like you to think about it when you have time, and please deepen your understanding of what the society is, and how to raise your kids, and how to make society more peaceful and things like that. So up until next time, please have a wonderful time. Okay? Bye bye now.